Welcome, Janet. Thank you so much for joining me today
Thank you so much for having me. What fun. I love
from
this.
Maui, no less. I was telling you ahead of time how jealous I am. I'm sure a lot of people would love that beautiful environment. So, tell us a little bit about what you do, how you came onto this path of not only body image but also yoga, just all of your background that has led you to where you are now.
Well, the background story is essentially I hated my body. And when I wasn't hating it, I was disconnected from it. And that was something that I realized only after I finally connected to it at the age of 40. Um, the irony, of course, was I was actually anorexic and was in the modeling world. And so thought that I was connected, thought that I thought my body was okay. But even when I was getting a lot of reinforcement about its appearance, really inside, I was constantly judging it. That daily, if not hourly, experience of some kind of "it's not okay" thought or feeling. Um, there was a study recently, actually in the UK, with an enormous, like I think it was like 20,000 women, and some were selected at random to be given a clicker just to click when they had the conscious awareness that they had a negative body thought. And guess how often the average woman has a negative conscious body thought? This isn't just the things that kind of run through us as a running pattern. I shall tell you.
I can't even imagine.
Well, this is just when she actually takes a clicker out, puts it in her hand, and presses the button. So it's 36 times a day, which is on the average of 1 to 3 negative body image thoughts every waking hour. So at least every hour, most of us are having some attacking thought about how we look, a face, body, or appearance. Anyway, so that's to say that my personal experience, I don't think is particularly unique, but that's probably what galvanized the work I do on the one hand. The other piece was having had a trauma as a child, and on the deeper level, really not liking being in my body at all. So it was both what it looked like and also what it felt like.
So
And
you had both this kind of negative self-talk, but also a disassociation of the body due to
yeah,
the trauma.
yes.
Where do you think the where do you think your thoughts came from originally? If this is happening at such a young age, were you influenced by what you were hearing around you? I know we get so many subliminal messages that we're not even aware of. But have you been able to kind of focus or hone in on some key ones that were influenced the way you were thinking?
Yes, well, this is the heart of some of the things that I teach. And being able to disengage from how we think about ourselves is first understanding exactly how and why we do think about ourselves. And clearly, we all are familiar with the constant onslaught of media. We're very aware of what it looks like to turn on the television, or even as the world is turning into be a more body positive, a more body accepting place, there is still always that constant look at this actual image of what looks good, or how that's actually the really attainable body type, right? Even as we're seeing these other images, so we know this. But then to go a little bit deeper into understanding how we form our experience of our bodies is actually to understand about how we form our identity. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just explain for a
Yes.
moment that you or we're not born having a perception of ourselves as anything. Our uniqueness is absolute. And we know this, right? Your face never has been nor never will be again, which is an astonishing thought. Of the billions and billions of people, you are actually utterly unique. Right? Absolutely. This is irrefutable fact. Completely unique. Never before, never again. However, your opinion or your identity about your perception of yourself is not unique. In fact, it's the opposite. Your perception of yourself is formed in relationship to other people. So you're not born thinking you're funny. You think you're funny because you make other people laugh. You think you're smart because you test well on that exam in relationship to other people. You think you're beautiful because of what you perceive and what you're told beauty is. And there's another piece about this which I just blows my mind every time I think about it. That at this moment, your brain is processing 90% of its information that is cued visually. So that the majority of what your brain is actually in the process of sorting through is what you are literally seeing with your eyes. Makes sense. You know, when we formed as a species, we lived longer when we saw a tiger and reacted a mile away rather than waited till we smelled the tiger and reacted, right? So this is like a biological wiring to see and to react, or to take in information from what we see. So if we take those two things, that our identity is formed by other people, and our brains are wired to look to establish our sense of self. I mean, I don't know if you're viewer of minds, but I'm from New York. I really want to swear. I'll say, so
Oh,
we're
yeah.
really left, right? Okay,
Yeah.
can I swear?
Oh, yes, of
Okay,
course.
we're really fucked, like by wiring. You know, it's like
Yeah.
so as a biological matter, as a primitive matter, how we think we look is how other people look. So we're set up to compare. It's why when we go to our yoga mat, it's almost impossible not to look, particularly when you're a woman, because of the world that we're surrounded by, and look and see, oh, her bottom looks different than mine. My thigh today looks like this. My face is looking a particular way, and it happens all the time. The trick and the exciting thing is actually that we can undo that. We can actually change how we are functioning in a moment, and we know this because of science. We know this because we understand how the brain works now. We know this because of neuroplasticity. We know this because of this fascinating research about how our wiring can actually be adjusted,
Mm.
um, and which actually yoga has been doing without identifying it as such for thousands of years. I mean, the fact that we combine breathing and movement and meditation is actually rewiring ourselves. It's why it feels so good after a practice. You know, when we're like, oh, I suddenly feel calmer. I have that yoga brain, which I always do, like walk away, leave your phone or whatever, right? Because we're actually rewiring ourselves. And so, yeah, this is my favorite thing to talk about. So you have to shut me up because, yeah,
No,
that's
I love it. I wanna, I completely understand this concept of perception and how everything is through the framework of comparison, for lack of a better word,
yeah,
comparing, like,
yeah,
we
yeah,
have something that is where do
yes.
you think the value of what a
Mm.
body looked like started to occur? Because I'm imagining before
Ah,
there were lots
mhm,
of
mhm.
extra things like
Yes,
media or
yeah,
photographs that this probably, if we go back 150 years, this
yes.
I'm wondering if women had the same, um, to some degree in their world, this same feelings about their body. Like, is this
Yeah.
body issue in particular
Mhm,
relatively
mhm.
new in the modern world?
Ooh, that's such a great question. And you know, my first response is I think about I actually have a PowerPoint and I have these great images of magazine articles from like 1853 that show women in corsets and with actual face paints that have arsenic and lead in them. You know,
Mm.
different things that we've been doing. In fact, for as long as we've been tracking media. So yes, and the first, you know, the first crack, yes, absolutely. As far as we can trace, women have been trying to improve their bodies or make them be appealing. You know, and and that I think is also its biological wiring. We understand that as a species, we want to be attractive so that we can be taken care of. I mean, now this I understand like some of this is politically fraught, and and part of what I'm here to say is that because we are wired in a particular way, it doesn't mean that we have to stay that way. That
I
just
know what you
because
mean in terms of
yeah,
like, men are supposed to be looking strong and healthy and robust
right,
because
right,
we want that as part of our, our
our
children.
wiring.
And
Yeah,
yes, and then
yeah,
we're supposed to look a certain way. to be appealing for that reproduction. Yeah, this is biologically kind of encoded in
It
us.
is in part,
As
and so
primates, other primates have it in different ways, display and birds and all of that. There's
right,
displaying of all. So it does
yes,
make
and
sense.
yes, and yes, exactly, and that we look healthy, the shiny hair, whatever, the shiny skin, the muscles, that this is actually means we're gonna be able to procreate and, have more children and have healthy children. So there's something I think that is deeply seated in the biology, and I do think it's interesting to think about exactly what you're saying, or, curious about that. I think something has accelerated, or that something has become even more and more, um, uh, what's the word? Like almost manic about that we have to look a very specific way, and it's become so important about how we function in the world, that I think probably is more than it was 200 years ago or 100 years ago. And you know what? It's interesting. I think because I haven't thought about it, I kind of want to chew it over, but I think it really does probably have something to do with the pace of how we live.
Hmm.
The fact that we are so connected, like everything about us has become so amplified over this last 50, 10, whatever many years, that we're getting more connected, but it also is accelerating. I don't know, maybe it's like the more we have the capacity to connect and be unified, the more we're also fracturing and dividing. Maybe it's something like that. What I'm here to say is that it's time for us to actually shift how we experience our bodies. In that same way, I feel like, this whole opportunity for this greater consciousness on the planet is here. And it's happening at a time when things are getting worse.
Hmm.
And,
So
maybe.
what are some steps we can take? Because I'm thinking about, people on social media. I think being
Mm,
older, I
mm,
think it's more natural to feel a little more ease in our bodies, but we're still carrying many years. If you get to a certain age, you're still carrying many years of maybe not liking the body, or having these um, body dysmorphia, or
mhm,
body dislike. So, what are some of the
yeah.
steps to begin
Mm,
this process as an individual so that it hopefully
yeah.
can become more of a collective?
Yeah, well, I genuinely, I mean, this is actually a yoga principle, this concept of swadhyaya, pratyahara, that when we actually just become aware is
Hmm.
actually the first step. And it sounds so boring, but it's actually, I would say, biologically and energetically true, that when we have self-awareness, we start to shift. And there's a beautiful parallel in that. Actually, the process that I teach, or what yoga really does, is the act of being self-aware begins to change the experience of the moment. So truly, the first step is to be able to really have the capacity to pause, and to be aware that in this moment I am stuck in a concept that my body is an appearance. I'm stuck in a way of relating to my body that is how it looks, because of how I've been trained. So first, interrupt by being aware, and then you've got to replace it with, okay, what is your body actually? And what I am here to preach, my friend, is that your body is an experience. The body is, yes, a brilliant biological experience, that if we just pause and reflect on the reality that 37 trillion cells are all doing their thing without you thinking about it at all. I mean, just that alone, like, it's just when we pause is a nice kind of reset. But we can tell ourselves that over and over. Like, I can tell myself I love myself, but when the inside is I can't, I hate myself, that's just an empty exercise, or even an invitation to remind myself how I don't love myself. So yes, we can acknowledge the miracle of the body, which I think is just fun. We can just kind of nerd out and talk about, like, do you realize that you have a whole system that's devoted to releasing waste? I mean, it's phenomenal. It's like, do you realize that you have a whole system that is like in every cell of your body, that's helping bring oxygen in and out, all of that. But that's well and good. What needs to happen next is you actually have to connect to the experience of it. And part of that is, in fact, recognizing your mind isn't necessary for it to function. And so that's a little bit of an aha moment. And it helps you shift into, okay, what is your actual experience of it? And doing things like getting on your mat and actually paying attention to what your breathing is. Getting on your mat and actually paying attention to how your calves feel today, or the sensation of your feet on the ground, or what it's like to lift your arms, one connects you to the experience of it, but then also connects you to your natural intelligence about it, what it wants to be well. Because
Mm.
that's all that we're really here to do. I mean, I would suggest that all we're really here to do is to become ourselves in the most satisfying, deeply peaceful, nourishing way that we can. And what better way to do that than in the actual experience of what you're living in, which is your body? And so it completely shifts. Wait a second. I get to go to my mat. I get to go live my life. But like the mat to me, it's like it's your magic carpet ride into shifting out of your body is what it looks like. It's such a beautiful, perfect petri dish. That there you are. Yep, you're surrounded by people, but who cares what they look like? How do you feel? How do you feel? It's I suggest, I believe, and anyone can believe whatever they want. That's the whole point. I believe that what you feel is actually a missives from your soul. And if you believe in some of the principles of yoga, like who you are is actually also a divine creature. And so what you're feeling is actually your divine self sometimes shouting at you, hey, this is really good for you, or this is bad for you. And being able to pay attention to what the difference is, that whole thing of sustaining a posture when it's uncomfortable and being able to pay attention to what's painful or what's discomfort. I mean, man, what more incredible opportunity is there for you to actually refine, listen to your soul? And so I think I just said a lot of different things, but I get very excited.
I love it. I love it. And I totally echo what you say about the body. I'm always just, even waking up, feel, and I think it's being a physical therapist and having seen so many people
Yes.
who have had significant
Yeah.
injuries or insults to the body that changes their life, and always being determined that I don't have to get to that place before I really respect all the things my body does for me without me even asking. But
Mm,
it is what's carrying us through the world. It's what's engaging us with the world around us. And it seems so oxymoronic to insult it, to be hard on it, to be challenge, to really, it's a burden. And I think that,
yeah.
I imagine that mostly women, I'm sure men have it too,
Mm,
but women that are having these body issues, not liking their body, it probably increases anxiety and depression. I'm sure they're interlinked.
mhm,
How do you deal with when you're teaching someone in one of your workshops or working with a
mhm,
private, and
mhm,
all the other things come along with it, the feelings of
mhm,
anxiety and
mhm,
not
mhm.
being able to really
Yeah.
sense that their body is a safe place?
Yes. No, thank you. And well, there's so many different wonderful pieces of what you said. But specifically to that, you begin with the body. And as as a physical therapist or as a yoga teacher, starting with your body is actually a very complex thing. And learning how to regulate and soothe your nervous system in this complex body is where you have to begin. And there are many traditions and steps. I have a system, you probably have a system of how you actually do that is not an obvious thing. So you actually start with the experience of your biology. You start with the experience of your body and learn how to self-soothe. In fact, I mean, I've worked in jail. I've worked with murderers. I've worked with people with severe physical disabilities. I was a psychotherapist. None of it is meaningful until we can actually sit with some connection to how to actually feel some way to be okay and to feel safe, to feel grounded. In the yoga, the chakras, you start with just where you are. And you got to make it be as okay as you can.
I
Everything
think
else.
that's really intelligent to actually go to the places that feel uncomfortable, because there's just a blockage there that your
Yeah,
body is really wanting to welcome you, your connection, and it's there's an
yeah,
invitation always present. and sometimes it feels vulnerable to take it. But yeah, you have to first connect there to
Yeah,
help, yeah, like you said, feel grounded and safe, and almost rebooting the nervous system's historical responses to things.
absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, when I mean, in my own trauma and then in working with many incredible people over these years of people who have trauma, you know, we don't get to resolve it unless we get to just sit where we are, stand where we are, and be able to feel that I can breathe, to be able to feel like I know that in this exact moment I'm not being hurt. And and that applies equally to I'm not going to be able to genuinely pay attention to say whether or not it's a physical injury or an emotional injury. I can't really pay attention to what it's telling me it needs for its wellness until I can be okay paying attention, until I can be okay just literally. I mean, the body is everything in my world. And
I
when
agree. It's everything in my world too. And people disconnect body and mind. It's really a disservice because you're not going to get to the heart of everything. And that
yeah,
wonderful um, integration of these systems that are one.
yeah. You know, one of my favorite one of my favorite examples, because I am a sci-fi fantasy nerd, um, is thinking about Harry Potter. And there's a scene when they all stand at the fireplace and they throw the powder in, and suddenly they're at like Diagon Alley, whatever. There's the little joke in there, but um, until we can do that, the only way that we get anywhere, literally, this is not metaphor, this is not some like woo spirit talk, is in our bodies, right? I mean, because we have bodies, we are alive.
Hmm.
I mean, if we just pause and reflect on that, the thing that makes us alive is when we take our first, well, and that's also, I suppose, political, but I I'm breathing. I have substance. I have like this weighted thing that I'm walking around in that is with me every second of my living experience. So it's like, and how like it's gotta mean something, you
Yeah,
know?
and it's got to be your best friend,
Yeah.
and because there's no one else you're living with that's the same amount like you're talking about.
No, right.
Do you have a memory of when this first took hold of you? Did you have any kind of epiphany or like,
Yeah.
really, this is how I'm going to heal myself and help others?
Yes, I definitely did. And it was in movement. For me, it was when I was dancing with a regular practice and I wasn't doing ballet or gymnastics, which I had done growing up, where there was a right step and a wrong step. It was moving in an authentic way. It was actually discovering that there was in me a capacity to actually feel my body that felt good. And it 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 really it happened over a period of months, but I'll never forget a moment of like, "Oh my god, I have a body." I'm like, "Oh my
Ah,
god, I have a body." Now, and what also happened was, "Oh my god, I'm living a life. Wait, is this the life I wanna live? Wait, what am I doing living here?" I mean, it really was like I woke
you
up
woke
and
up.
I mean,
Mm.
and that expression, which is so common, it really is exactly what it felt like. It was like my kinda like blinked my eyes and was like, "Holy cow, I'm actually here." And that was like when I was 40, Laura, and I had spent my whole life um, pretty much outside of it and not knowing it. I think sometimes we get to a point when we realize, yeah, I don't really. I mean, I work with someone who's like, no, I'm not connected. I don't really feel it, and I would like to feel my body, whether or not it's because of intimacy or an awareness that I can't be in a relationship, which is part of which is sort of what I'm doing a lot of right now. But yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes we don't even realize that we're not connected. Except
So
maybe I
how do
do.
so how do you bring some of those tools into the work you do? You connect the body.
Yeah,
When like if you send somebody home with exercises, can you give
yeah.
us a couple of kind of those practical tips that people would do on their own?
Um, yes. Well, start with the body scan. Start with something that you can, pick up. I mean, I actually have some on Insight Timer, but you can do any. um, start with just paying attention to what you're actually physically feeling. You've got sensation in your body right now. If you just shift your focus and notice like right now, I'm aware of my left hand and my right forearm. I can actually feel that my hand's a little bit cool. I can tell if I just pause, I can tell that, my knees are bent or that my back has a little bit of an ache because it's early in the morning and I haven't stretched. That you pay attention to what physical information you are having right now. And everything goes from there. So that is fundamental. And you have to practice being able to tolerate that information. Because if you have trauma or if you just aren't used to it, actually doing that can be very triggering, which is why you've got to go back to actually start with the first step, which is knowing how to soothe yourself. And once you can do that, now you can practice actually paying attention to how you feel. And then recognizing that really doing that, at least I know that for me, for most of my life, and even today, this is what I go around talking about and teaching about. I'm passionate about it. I spend a lot of my time happily disconnecting and disassociating. I love to watch television. I love to eat toast. I got all these great ways to just numb out. And so increasing our tolerance for actually what we feel is also a process. And that also requires steps. Like I have to practice that. I have to practice with what's not comfortable.
I think that's great to give yourself permission, though, that there's maybe a sustained discomfort is not going to be, capable that one day or something. And that,
Absolutely.
don't also, if you do want to numb out in front of watching something, that you don't have to judge yourself over it either.
Absolutely. No. Absolutely. And that's part of this process of self-awareness of what I would call, yoga actualization or freedom or liberation, is being able to be sovereign and make choices about when you're doing that. Like I'm very clear, like I have in my system at the end of the day, I probably watch every episode of The Golden Girls maybe 4 times. That's kind of my go-to soothing. I just love my girls, but it's conscious. It's not what I know I spent the first 40 years of my life doing. You get to actually choose. You get to choose when and in what way you soothe. You get to choose in what way you are feeling the discomfort, which is in fact the next step, which is that when you are showing up for it, now you have the information about how to change. Now you got the information right to go back to, wow, I am really attacking myself right now. Now you're off to the races about actually what intervention to make. Now you've got information like, whoa, I actually hear the voice of my mother. Whoa, I'm suddenly back in 7th grade, surrounded by the girls laughing because I'm the fat girl. Whatever it is, now you get to go to the next healing transformational process. So, yeah, start with the body scan.
So, in a way, feeling it is a prerequisite to healing it.
Ooh, I like that. I might have, with your permission, I might have to tag that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if it was 30 years back or 3 years back or in that moment. Yeah. What do you think about how do you advise people to handle the prevalence of diet culture and messaging from media that,
yes,
even if there is more body acceptance, like how is it best just to not look at it? Is it when you look at it, see it for what it is, which is paying someone to tell you need to do something and you need to buy something to be a better person? It's like, that's the way I look at it, but I understand that is not necessarily how everybody else looks at it.
That's that's a whole topic, isn't it? In fact, in the program, we have a whole chunk of food. How do we interact with food? And God, there's so much to say. And here's the short answer. No one gets to tell anybody else what's right or what's wrong. So part of what your right is trusting that I'm going to follow this model that makes me feel better. Bless you. Do it. And if what works for you today doesn't work for you tomorrow, bless you. do that, change, be dynamic. And so, it's kind of perfect because I know that when I first started my yoga journey and started some of this, kind of healing process, I thought I was going to go nuts because I literally had one of my mentors who was a Chinese medicine practitioner who was like, I have to cook all your food. And then I was over on the other hand, I had a mentor that was a raw foodist. And I thought, well, oh my God, I love both of these women. They're both alive and vital and brilliant. What do I do? I mean, it was a real crisis. Well, today maybe I'll cook, but here's what I did, and here's what I think you do, is you pay attention to you.
Hmm.
Just pay attention to you. And then we're back to where we were. Actually, to notice how you feel when you eat cabbage. Actually, pay attention to how you feel when you eat meat. I know that for me, I was a vegetarian as a yogi and a Hindu practitioner. And then I became a mother and I was like, damn, bring on the steak. And then I let it go because I felt like I needed to. And now I was like, ooh, I think I want, I mean, I don't want to upset any of your listeners. I was like, I think I want blood. Like this
Yeah.
was last night, so, but here's why this whole process all is such a beautiful symmetrical thing is that to do that is hard, to actually pay attention and to give ourselves permission to
Right.
be
It's much
interested
easier
in.
to get a little cookbook recipe,
Yeah,
follow step by
yes,
step
yeah,
versus, well, what is it that you want? What is it
you
that you
really want.
feel,
Well, and
yeah.
thank you. And that's the other. And then of course, I feel like I'm not promoting my program, but it's a system. The system of how we wake up is also then actually learning how to tolerate what you want. Like actually being comfortable with our desire. Whoa, now we're in a whole nother area. To actually have room to tolerate want. I think there's nothing more powerful than you can ask somebody than, what do you want? What do you want?
And that's
Because
such a hard question, right? I mean, it is. It's a
yes,
hard question for a lot of people. They'll be
yes,
like, well, I don't know. What do you think about, it's like then it
yes,
comes back and you realize like
totally.
people they aren't going in to
I,
what might feel right or what their
yeah. Oh
voice
my
is telling
God.
them. They really
Oh
want
my
the
God.
answers given to them.
Girlfriend, I got to go on right now. I have this beautiful partner whom I adore, and I'm thinking, I think I want to be alone. Like, oh my God, I am scared to death to tell him. I'm scared to actually want what I want.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know when this podcast comes out, but hello, honey pie, I love you. I mean, to have to work through that is to actually continue to tolerate my own personal desire. Whoa, that's hard stuff. And so when we talk about food and diet, it's complicated because we are surrounded by so much information. We're surrounded by so much quote authority. And what's tricky is that so much of that authority can be right to those people and to that in that moment. Like, this whole thing of being connected to ourselves, which is really all that I do. It's like that, or I think that yoga really does. Just can you connect to yourself, right? Yoga, union, this body self and the divine self, is that we are also unique. And so, I mean, no one gets to be right anymore. We only get to be ourselves.
Mhm.
And that's okay, that's scary. I kind of don't really, I want someone to tell me the right way to do something. I want someone to make sure that I'm going to be okay. It's scary being ourselves. That's,
I
part
think
of
that's really a very important concept. Yes, it can be really scary, and it's part of like that what you mentioned before, sitting with the discomfort of that feeling, but not reacting by doing what somebody else says you should do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, oh, the layers of it are profound. I know as both a teacher, yoga teacher, and a yoga student, as a teacher, I would often encourage like authentic movement. Like, you adjust. It's critical actually for your practice. I mean, this is I'm preaching the message, right? And then I also know that I had this one student who would always stand at the front and always do everything that I didn't say.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was
Like
completely off in his own world. And eventually, and it was really distracting for other students. And I had to say, yes, thank you for listening to the message, like doing your own thing, but it's actually really hard. So why don't you either go to the back or to then inquire, is there something going on? Like, because for him, it was almost a commitment to not do what the class was doing. And so, you know, I was like, well, what? Let's like actually do the real swadhyaya. Do the real self study. Are you actually doing the thing that your authentic self wants? Or is there some other, are there some other story going on, but it actually, I kind of, I'm mad because I'm still mad because I don't want to do anybody else because I don't really trust anybody else, which is actually what his story was. And so, you, where does that take me? I'm not sure where it takes me, but
Well, that it's good to have a structure, but then allow some of that individual creativity, freedom, whatever it is, come into it as well,
yes. Well, I think actually what it
without
also,
going like being
yes.
distracting to others if you're in a group class.
Yes, and I think that actually I mean, this is a little meta, but I think that where we are as a species right now is I ultimately believe that we are one love principle. I believe that there is a oneness, and that is the one truth. I don't think that we can feel it yet, but I think that we're working towards that consciousness. And and ultimately, when we are fully expressing the truth of ourselves is when we're actually going to feel our connection to others, right? Because if
Hmm.
we are already connected, the refinement, however, of being ourselves is, I think, is where we are struggling with as a planet right now. How do I tolerate loving someone whose politics are completely opposite from mine? How do I tolerate, the mess that we're in? And so, on a meta level, I think that we are figuring it out. I think it's messy. It's like, three steps forward, one step back. About I do want you to have an authentic practice, but make sure that please that you're not doing it in front of everybody else who's trying to do their practice. While 'cause, like, I'm offering something which is actually to put your foot here, or it's going to
Yeah.
help with your knee there, or whatever. So, but it's messy, and I think that ultimately, who are you? What do you need? What do you want? Is is the clarifying process to get us to love, to get
Mm.
us to connection. So,
Those
yeah.
are great questions. So tell us more about how someone can find you and your program and the things that you offer for any of the listeners here.
Thank you. The best way to find me is just to connect with me on social media, on Facebook or Instagram, because I'm always posting things there. I have a website that you can contact me, and I have a program which is very specifically for diving into this, to be able to go from I feel like I don't like my body or I'm disconnected from my body to being actually ready for intimacy. And so there's an arc, um, that we go through these steps and we go deep and we do it in a group, because I also think that when we get to do it with each other, it's a powerful transformation practice. We know this, that practicing alone in our room is very different than practicing in a group. To have the experience of being able to hear another woman say what you feel is
Hmm.
powerful.
It
It's,
is. And saying the
it,
truth in front of people,
yes,
it like augments the accountability of that. And the
yes,
when you say something to be true, even if it's been scary, it's less scary because it's not being held back. And saying it in front of other people is probably the scariest thing. So talk about like working on being braver and more courageous with this, end goal or goal that you want of improving your connection to yourself and your idea of your body and its worth and all of that. Doing in a group, I imagine, is very powerful.
it is powerful. It occurs to me because I don't know. I always imagine on a podcast, I always imagine whoever's listening is on a walk, like listening on your headphone.
A
And so
walk,
I'm
a
going to
drive,
say,
yes, yeah.
yes. And so, what I would also love to do is anyone listening who would like just a free copy of my book, either Love Your Body or Your Body is Your Superpower. I would love to send to your listeners. Just tell me that we said hello from your podcast.
Oh, I
And you
love
can
that.
just get in touch with me, just Janet Farnsworth at Yahoo. Let's just do that one at Valley 4. Janet Farnsworth at yahoo.com and say, I heard you on the podcast. Send me your book, please. And I would love to send you my book.
What a gift. What a gift. What a gift that you're offering and what a gift you're giving to the world
Mm.
because everyone is not, we all have some residue of the things that we've been told or conditioned to believe. And people are at different places in this quest to really feel that our body is our home. And so I so appreciate you've dedicated your years here of for
Mm.
helping others to find that so that we can all, once we're really loving our own home, we can really feel, like you said, the unity that we're in this together. And what a, what an amount, I don't want to say a terrible amount, but like so much energy is wasted on not liking ourselves. And
Oh,
if we can
yeah.
redirect that, especially in the world today, it would be like into good energy that's making,
Yes.
compassion a high priority. And
Yeah.
it's nobody wants to spend that much time not liking themselves, but think about the amount of
Mm.
energy that's expending.
Yes. 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 It's extraordinary. That goes back to that research study. 36 times a
Mm,
day, like every hour of of a siphoning off of creative energy, of peaceful energy, of love.
hmm
It's extraordinary to think about what could happen if we weren't beating up ourselves and trying to
Amen.
fix, right? So thank you.
So
Thank
Janet and
you.
I both want all of you to take the time and really sit with yourselves and feel
Mm.
the true. It is a miracle, our body, how it's working for us, even as we are not always nice to it, and
Mhm.
really treat it as this sanctuary that it is. So begin your journey and check out more on Janet. And I appreciate your time and your
Mm.
beautiful energy. Thank you so much.
Mm. Thank you. What a joy to be with you. Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
And for everyone listening, as always, and especially today, I'm pulling for you.
Mm.